Viewer discretion advised.
Night falls, and you awaken to realize that every belief you hold, every truth you trust, has been fed to you like morphine in an IV, drop by drop. Menticide by degrees, cognitive dissonance, microagreements, emotional bias, until the world as you perceive it is merely a carefully crafted illusion, and you are left hollowed out of all that makes us human, but incapable of comprehending all you have lost. Hello, freaks and freethinkers. I'm your host, Deep Amber, and this is Radio Ghost Town. Tonight, we're diving deep into how our emotions have been weaponized against us and what that means for the future of free thought in today's culture of propaganda, fake news, and digital censorship. A few short decades ago, the world in which we live would have been considered science fiction, and I mean that as an insult. They missed their delivery dates on hoverboards, holograms, and colonies on Mars, and instead backed up a dumpster truck full of dystopian nightmares and dumped it on our doorstep. How did we fall this far? How do psychological operations run by bug-eyed, bargain basement, Bond villain wannabes work so well on the free people who are, for the most part, capable of crossing the street by ourselves and swallowing before we start to drool? I will tell you how. They played the long con on our emotions. What began as getting in touch with our feelings in the 1960s has now manifested its final form, where everyone is made up entirely of feelings, and logic and reason, analytical thought, and reality are utterly disregarded, while the most irrational assertions imaginable are worshipped as legitimate because feelings or something. What I didn't realize until embarking upon this series is just how much emotions mess with our minds. And this is not top secret information. It's science, and I mean literal, for realsies, fact-based, research-backed science, not Fauci science. All we've learned thus far about propaganda, thought control, and psychological operations converge at this point: our emotions. Emotions, as originally intended, are a bonus. Not strictly a survival necessity, they're a gift. The scent of the rose, seasoning to give life its flavor. Of course, since sin entered the world, our emotions, like everything else, have been turned against us. They remain seasoning, but now mingled with poison. Kept in their proper place, they can add a dash of spice to our experiences, but they must not be life's main dish, any more than you'd sit down to dinner and throw back a big bowl of black pepper and paprika. Physiologically, emotions shut down your intellectual autonomy and higher reasoning. If we want to function as a free people, we must be able to exert our will, slap down insurgent emotions, retake the helm, and maintain captaincy of our own ship. But doing so takes practice. It takes work. It's hard. And we've been programmed for comfort and convenience. Most of us don't care to do hard things anymore, and that's just exactly what the serpent and his meat puppets among the vulgar elite and their toilet bowl drinking lapdogs want. Let's break it down. As human beings, made in the image of God, we are three-part beings. We are a spirit, we have a soul, and we live in a body. The soul is also triune, consisting of the mind, will, and emotions. When I say mind, I do not mean brain. Your brain is the squishy thing beneath your skull. Your mind is the inner part of you and the seat of your personality. Mind and brain work together, but are separate and distinct. The soul as a whole, mind, will, emotions, functions as the link between the body and the spirit, a job which was made nigh impossible by the repercussions of our treason in Eden. In the fall, our body, soul, and spirit connection suffered a disconnect. Body and soul took the reins, while our spirit, the part of us that's meant to connect directly to God, sort of curled up in the corner like a lost child in the darkness and cried out for a savior. The resulting imbalance is what drives all the bad stuff in the world. A secondary imbalance is being forcibly engineered, building upon the success of the first. This time, the fractures in the soul between the mind, will, and emotions. Far from being the inevitable result of an unparalleled supernatural crisis, it has been manufactured by the enemy of our soul, the serpent and his minions. We have been / being programmed to surrender our mind and will to the control of our emotions instead of the other way around. Now, Before you start arguing and miss the entire episode, let me explain. Strong emotions are not in and of themselves evil, but they are incredibly powerful. And what they can do to our minds is terrifying. And when emotions are allowed to remain in control, the result is literal insanity. Y'all have seen crazy people. Y'all know it's true. Strong emotions kick the amygdala into high gear. That's the seat of your emotions in your physical brain. The amygdala, in turn, turns up the knob on your stress hormones, releasing the likes of adrenaline and cortisol into your body because your brain, which is mostly clueless, assumes you're being chased by a lion, and your fight or flight response needs to be in total control with no distractions. But you're not. You're not, are you? It's never a lion. But still, the stress hormones are flowing, and the amygdala is taking up most of your mental bandwidth. We only have so much, even the best of us, and since emotions are hogging the signal strength, there's not enough left over for your prefrontal cortex to do its job. The prefrontal cortex is where rational thought and manifestation of the will operates. Your prefrontal cortex has to kick in to keep you from doing something stupid. But emotions are in the driver's seat, and they don't want to give up control, which they will have to do if you get distracted from their drama by silly things like the big picture, rational thought, and problem solving. So they engage tunnel vision just to keep you under their thumb. Now, you're experiencing something called emotional bias. This means you only notice and retain elements and circumstances that justify and perpetuate whatever emotion you're feeling. It's a feedback loop. Imagine I'm mad at you. Because of this, my emotions say you are a literal monster without a shred of goodness in your soul. But they have to offer me proof. So, emotional bias carefully controls what I notice and remember to ensure no conflicting information gets through. It takes note of your scowl, your dismissive voice, and recalls an incident 6 months ago when you said, "What?" to me, and I didn't like your tone. Emotional bias does not take into consideration external factors like your headache or the bad day you've had. Emotional bias will not be factoring in contradictory evidence like all the times you've done me favors, spoken well of me to others, and made time to listen to my problems. It's biased. That's why they call it that. Next, cognitive dissonance takes its turn. We experience stress and discomfort when our actions don't align with our personal beliefs and values. The right thing to do is correct our actions to align with our values and end the stress. In this case, it means I forgive you because I'm commanded to by God. But emotions aren't interested in right. Just like the vulgar elite, their only concerns are validating themselves and remaining in control. So, cognitive dissonance drives us to minimize the discomfort, not eliminate it, by justifying and making excuses. Confirmation bias, which is just like emotional bias, helps out by selectively acknowledging only facts that support the error of our ways. And we are left with regret and guilt and dread of future choices, which generates anxiety and depression, which causes a constant influx of stress hormones, which cause anxiety and depression. It's cyclical and self-sustaining, and it all serves to feed the emotion monster and keep it and the shady figures pulling our strings in control. The first and perhaps most obvious problem with emotions mode becoming our brain's default setting is it just makes us the worst. The second is having to live with the consequences of the dumb things we did while our logic centers were offline and the sleep-deprived toddler of our triune soul was mashing the control buttons of our brain. But the third is the most upsetting. If we live in emotions mode, then we are never truly in control of the life God gave us. Our emotions and those who are feeding us our emotional cues are. They become, in effect, our lesser gods, and we obey them more than the one who died to save us. By the way, yes, emotions mode is worse in young people. Their prefrontal cortex isn't fully developed yet, and with the changes in hormones, neuroplasticity, synaptic pruning, and dopamine sensitivity at work, it makes it even harder for them to rein in the amygdala shenanigans and assert analytical thought and impulse control over their teenage tendency towards snap judgments and overgeneralizations. So why, in heaven's name, do they insist our children be allowed to permanently mutilate their genitalia, carve off chunks of their flesh, and yoke themselves to an endless buffet of pharmaceuticals for life? Why indeed? After all, there's nothing more permanent than a teenager's whims. Impulses. Decisions. The enemy of our souls and the filthy traitors in his service are taking advantage of a vulnerable class because it's easy, because it works. It's practically a societal cheat code. Menticide enacted on a developing brain is highly effective. It's the iron law of propaganda. The younger it starts, the less it has to make sense. Done properly, it leads to a homegrown army of brainwashed agenda zombies whose higher reasoning is so beaten down and underdeveloped that they are nigh incapable of questioning the party line. Where were we? Oh yes, the emotional control game. It has proven effectual time and time again in totalitarian regimes throughout time immemorial, and now in the modern age of social media, instant gratification, and fake news, and electronically delivered peer pressure, it's operating in overdrive. The powers that be leverage it like crazy during the scamdemic. Emotionally charged information is disseminated via the news and social media. It triggers fears that the entertainment complex has been seeding into us for decades. Fear shuts down analytical thought and drives cognitive dissonance by making conscientious objectors feel like they're murdering grandma. People wore the face diaper. Who knew doing so didn't make a lick of sense because, well, it was easier than dealing with the stress of conflict, the fear of not fitting in, the confusion of authority figures parading unreality around as fact. Even if it doesn't help, they told themselves, it doesn't hurt. Except it does hurt because that was a micro-agreement, our final stepping stone on the road to creeping menticide. Micro-agreements happen every time we just go along instead of thinking things through and standing on our principles. We nod to a slogan, put a symbol in our bio, wear the face diaper. And tiny mutations occur that distort our core principles over time until eventually we have been completely made over in the image of the state, the agenda, the serpent. A few dozen micro-agreements are all it took to get us from marriage is between a man and a woman to thruples are families too. They're the psychological embodiment of the 1 degree at a time boiling frog principle. And that is why the Apostle Paul warned us against sinning against our conscience. God knows how dangerous it is and the kind of internal chaos and vulnerability it causes. Even 2,000 years ago, he saw this coming. But the sad fact is, at one time or another, we've all made tiny compromises and surrendered part of our personal core values. We've all allowed our emotions to overrun the facts to keep us trapped in destructive patterns rather than acknowledging we were wrong and making the hard choice to enact our willpower and change. The dystopia hovering ominously on the horizon is one that penalizes logic, analytical thought, reason, and rational behavior while rewarding emotionally driven defiance of reality because unhinged, emotional people cannot effectively defend their personal beliefs from outside attack. They cannot defend their children from the sadistic, modern-day Joseph Mengeles who want to surgically castrate them for profit. Emotional people are incapable of even realizing they're being controlled. They cannot discern fact from fiction or truth from lie. All they know is what their emotions allow them to see. And the world as you see it through the lens of your emotion is not the world as it truly is. So what can we do? What is our defense? Well, a firm grasp on objective morality, a clear defined understanding of right and wrong, written down in black and white where you can see it, reference it, study it, and constantly check and recheck yourself, your values, beliefs, and actions against the plumb line of absolute truth, the Word of God. The heart is deceitful above all things. You can't follow it any more than you can follow societal pressure or the fake news, the talking heads. Follow after God and His Word. Stay sharp, stay free, and I'll see you next time. Now, for the record, Satan is alive and active in the world today. He is your mortal enemy with just one goal, to destroy you body and soul. But the good news is we have a champion. His name is Jesus. Jesus is the only way to God, and the Bible is our only source for absolute truth. Together, they're our only hope for salvation. I'm Dee Bamber, and this is Radio Ghost Town.
We're living in precarious times. Now more than ever, we need to possess the mind of Christ and operate in the wisdom that comes from God.
At Fly By Light Media, we choose freedom over comfort and truth over popularity. We hope you will too.
And don't forget to check out our merchandise through the link in the description.
And watch more videos.
Together, we are Fly By Light Media, and we rise to shine.